So Austin just got a huge green light from the federal government on something that is going to absolutely change Austin and the Austin real estate market forever. So if you're buying or considering buying in Austin, this will affect you. So let's dive into how this changes things. This just isn't some distant maybe anymore. The feds just gave Project Connect, which is Austin's planned light rail system, a medium-high rating, which is the highest ranking of any major project across the country this cycle. That puts Austin in line for about $4.1 billion in federal funding. Now combine that with the Cap and Stitch project on I-35 and billions of dollars in healthcare development and expansion throughout the Austin area, and Austin is positioning itself for a ton of growth over the coming years. So that said, if your plans include potentially buying in Austin anytime within the next 1, 2, 3, 5, even 10 years, definitely stick around to the end because this is going to have a drastic impact on what life looks like in the city, commute times, and what life really looks like within the surrounding suburbs once this thing's done. There is a lot happening here. So let's break it down piece by piece so you can see what it really means if you're planning on moving here. So at its core, I'm making this video for people that want a better understanding of what Austin's light rail Project Connect is going to be and what it is, what it's going to do to property values, the impact it can have, and the construction headaches that people might have to deal with, and how it compares to the existing red line that we have as a rail system here in Austin. So that is what we currently have. So let's start with what we already have here in the Austin area. It's referred to the Red Line. It is a commuter train that goes from the northern suburb of Leander all the way down into downtown Austin. Now it's on existing freight lines and it covers about 32 miles. It mainly really serves the northern suburbs like Leander, Lakeline, Cedar Park, and it gets those people down into the city core. Now it's also great for things like game day at Q2 Stadium, but that's not what it's mainly used for. Weekday usage is still relatively low at about 2,000 people a day. So again, it's very much just a commuter train right now. It's not a all of Austin, all day type system yet. Now we have seen some updates as of late, right? So I mentioned earlier Q2 Stadium, which is where Austin FC plays. So there's a station that was recently built there that was an input about $60 million. So they're definitely expanding, but it's still not one of those types of trains that you see in places like DC. So Project Connect is going to build on top of the existing Red Line, not completely replace it. So they're going to use some of the existing tracks and build out a true light rail backbone down the city of Austin. If you like seeing what's actually happening here in the city of Austin, not just the headlines and the clickbait, then click that subscribe button because I release new videos every single week. So let's start with what Project Connect really is, right? So Project Connect is a voter-approved multi-billion-dollar light rail project here in Austin. It's going to be broken into 2 phases, starting with phase 1, who would have thought? It's also going to include rapid transit bus systems, it's going to include park and ride stations, and it's got funding in place planned for any displacement that might happen when they're under construction in these areas. So they're already really thinking about the future and the impact that this is going to have on the city, and they're at least coming up with a plan. So phase 1 of the light rail project is what just got that big federal boost. And that includes 10 miles of tracks, about 15 new stations, and all new electric trains. Route-wise, and we'll pop this up on a map so you can actually see it for yourself, but it's going to start at about 38th and Guadalupe, and then it's going to head straight down through downtown Austin, across Lady Bird Lake, and then it's going to split. So it's going to head east at Riverside, out towards the direction of the airport, and it's going to continue down kind of the South Congress corridor, and it's going to go down South Congress and end around Oltorf. So it's literally connecting some of the areas and parts of Austin that I get asked about by my relocation clients and buyers every single day. Places like UT, downtown, South Congress, the hike and bike trails, all of these things are going to start to feel a lot more connected. So I actually had some relocation clients that were really, really interested in living in, the Leander, Cedar Park area, but they needed more frequent commutes. They wanted to be more connected to the city. And with the existing Red Line that we have now, the trains just didn't run often enough. It wasn't frequent enough. It just didn't make sense for them to utilize that train. So they ended up having to buy a little bit closer to the city center. And that is going to change drastically once this line is created. It's not just going to be a commuter that has a couple of stops throughout downtown. It's going to make the city of Austin feel a lot more connected and give you a lot more options if you do decide to live in a place like Cedar Park or Leander. Once Project Connect is actually up and running, we're expecting to have stops at most of the key stations every 5 to 10 minutes. So that's compared to what we have existing on the Red Line. We're waiting at least about 30 minutes, upwards of an hour sometimes, for a train to show up at any given station. So the big news that we talked about earlier is that the Federal Transit Administration just ranked Project Connect, Austin's light rail system, a medium high, right? So that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's actually the highest ranked project in all of the United States this cycle. So that puts us in line for about $4.1 billion of federal funding, which is absolutely huge. Overall, that should cover phase 1. Phase 2 will make that total, funding need about $8.2 billion for the entire project. So realistically, we're very much so on track, no pun intended, but we're on track to, start construction here in Austin in about 2027 and have stops up and running about 2033. Which in the big scheme of things isn't really very long from now. All right, so let's do a comparison of what we have with the existing Red Line, that one, and what we're going to get with the light rail and the Project Connect. So let's start with the Red Line. The Red Line is a commuter train with long distances and fewer stops that doesn't really stop all that frequently. It's primarily serving the north suburbs and the people that need to commute into the core of downtown. It's good for park and rides and events like Q2 Stadium, Austin FC games, but it's certainly not usable day to day by most of the residents in the greater Austin area. So the Project Connect light rail is going to be a lot more urban connections with trains running at a really high frequency down a spine through Austin's most dense areas. It's focused on UT, downtown, major employment, and entertainment districts. It's going to feel a lot more like the light rail systems in major cities like DC than just a suburban commuter train. So next, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into the actual coverage, right? So the Red Line is 32 miles that stretches all the way from Leander to downtown with those limited and kind of infrequent stops. Historically, there's been some limited walkability right around some of the stations, but that's changing with areas like the McCalla station and the future Uptown hub near the Domain. But those are going to be more walkable once you get off the train. They're not necessarily going to make the entire train system be walkable. So then let's talk about that 10-mile section, which is phase 1 of Project Connect. That's going to be something that covers, 38th to Guadalupe, down into the University of Texas, then straight into downtown, and then it's going to cross the river and go to areas like South Congress, Riverside, and Altdorf, and ultimately it'll head east out to the airport. These are the exact parts of town that relocation clients ask me about all the time, and they are about to get a huge boost. Even areas outside the city core like Leander, Cedar Park, Lakeline, they're all going to see a major upside once this project is completed because they're going to have just such stronger connectivity to the heart of the city of Austin. Now, I'd love to hear your take on things, so drop down in the comments below and let me know, where do you see yourself if you were to move to Austin? Do you want to be out in the northwest suburbs where you can still take advantage of the connectivity of the city once this is all said and done? Do you want to be right next to a station where you have just almost infinite walkability, or at least compared to what Austin currently has? Or do you see yourself kind of somewhere in the middle? Drop your answer in the comments below and I'll learn a little bit about what my potential buyer demographic looks like in the coming years. So next, let's dive into, riders and the frequency here. The Red Line, you're looking again at about roughly 2,000 weekday riders, with peak hours really being the main focus. Then in the light rail, we're expecting over 30,000 daily riders by 2045. And they're all going to be taking advantage of those frequent every 5, maybe 10-minute stops at most of the key stations. So if the Red Line is a commuter shuttle that gets people from the suburbs into the downtown area, think of Project Connect like the actual blood system of the city of Austin. It's going to connect a lot more different areas, and it's really going to determine which neighborhoods feel walkable, feel connected, feel truly Austin, and make people not have to hop on Mopac or I-35 as often. Now, I know that this is a lot of moving parts, it's a lot to remember, so if this is overwhelming or stressful in any way, shape, or form, that's what I'm here for. Don't hesitate to reach out. I actually make these videos to help people just like you, so I'd absolutely love to connect and we can go over, what these major projects are, including Cap and Stitch project, which I'll cover in another video, and you can make sense of everything and we can come up with a game plan that, again, takes that stress away and makes your move here to Austin a smart move, not just a move. All right, so let's talk about what this actually means for people thinking about relocating to Austin, right? People that are thinking about buying a house here. So right now, the strategy is, pick your neighborhood, pick your suburb, pick your Austin pocket today with the future in mind. If you're aiming for kind of a more car optional lifestyle, for the first time ever, that's actually becoming a real option here in the city of Austin and the surrounding suburbs as things get more and more connected. The main areas that we kind of want to highlight, if that's what your focus is, Guadalupe, UT in the central Austin area, downtown, the Seaholm district, 2nd Street, South Congress, Travis Heights, and the East Riverside areas. Over the long run, you can expect a lot more mixed use projects, mid to high rise residential units, and realistic walkable retail entertainment style amenities right around the core of these new stations that are going in. But as we know, things like that often come with higher demand, which means higher price points and a lot more competition for getting in after the stations are already built. Next, let's do a quick timeline reality, right? So just because we got put in line at the top of the list for federal funding does not mean that Project Connect is happening overnight. I said it before, but again, we're planning on breaking ground in 2027, and we're going to have some stations up and running in 2033. Now, I say some stations. That doesn't mean that the entire phase 1 is going to be done. It means that some of the key stations are going to be operational and people are going to be able to start using them. So if you're buying within the next 1 to 5 years, let's say, then you're buying pre-rail, which means that you have the opportunity to buy something at a lower price, wait for it to appreciate over time. Now, you'll still be dealing with a little bit of a headache construction while they're building these stations and the rail lines out. But in my opinion, the upside there is definitely worth it, because I think the areas right around the stations and even within biking distance, a short drive, I think those are going to see a really big upside in appreciation once the project is completed. So if you're planning on buying and staying in Austin, 7, 10 plus years, then that's where you're really going to reap the benefits, because again, the appreciation in home values, but you're also going to see commutes look a lot different because people are going to be less dependent on I-35, MOPAC, the toll roads, which means that they're going to be more usable because there's going to be less people on them as more and more people take advantage of Project Connect and the rail system that it's going to create. And then let's not forget about East Austin, where we're going to see the light rail go straight to the airport. So it's going to make commutes to the airport a lot less stressful, no more drop-offs, no more Ubers, blah, blah, blah. You can leave at one of the park and ride stations and you can get straight to the airport from Cedar Park, from Leander, from downtown Austin, wherever it is you might find yourself. So long as you're on the light rail corridor, you can get to the airport super, super easily, which makes travel a lot easier. One more question for the comments. I want to know, where do you see the biggest upside, right? Do you see yourself as somebody who gets in early before the wave and takes advantage of all the upsides in the future? Or do you see yourself as somebody who kind of waits it out, doesn't want to deal with the construction, and then moves in after everything's completed? So here's how I break it down with my current clients that are considering a move that you might be considering, right? So if they want to be somewhere where they can still take advantage of the light rail, but they don't want to necessarily be in the thick of everything and in the craziness, then I keep those people, and I'll probably keep you, if that's you, a little bit further away, removed from the actual station locations, but still close enough to where, a scooter ride, a little bit of a longer walk, or maybe a short bike ride gets you into the station so you can still use it, but you're not living through the construction. Now, if you're in it for the long haul and you are super fired up about Austin becoming this awesome walkable city, then we're gonna focus, on the areas right around the stations where you're gonna actually be able to step out your front door and hop on the train and get to all these other amazing areas that are going to be much more connected all around the city of Austin. And you're going to live with that construction headache, which I always want to be upfront about, but I think the upside for the long term is really, really cool. So let's talk about what this means for people that own one of these homes or buys one of these homes during and then after construction. So during construction, you're going to see curb appeal go down. So if you're trying to sell in one of these areas during construction, then more days on market, lower curb appeal, your buyer pool goes from here to here, because before a big project, people like to get in early and buy, or most people wait until afterwards. So again, from here to here is your buyer pool during construction. You're gonna deal with the noise, the traffic, the construction, the lane closures, the detours, things that just aren't super, super appealing to a buyer that just wants a house. Now, long term, you're talking about what I consider to be and think to be really big upsides in appreciation. I think the areas around these stations, even in the surrounding areas, so not just necessarily right here if we're doing a bullseye, you know, the walkable zone, the bikeable zone around these stations, I think they skyrocket so far as appreciation goes, which is a huge upside to get in early. You know, now we're gonna go kind of the opposite way. So post-construction, your buyer pool goes from here in these areas, and then after construction it goes to here, because those areas become so much more desirable. You know, people love the ability to live walkable. We'll say the walkability factor goes way up, home values go way up, desire and demand for those areas all go way up. So for buyers that buy now, get in early, or sellers that hold until after construction are really going to be able to take advantage of, in my opinion, almost a once in a lifetime opportunity if you're around where these stations are going to be built. So it's definitely something to consider, something we can talk about if you want to connect. And then as you get a little bit further away from the line, you know, you're no longer necessarily bikeable or walkable, you're still going to see some benefits, right? I mentioned it earlier, but the traffic on the major thoroughfares, I-35, Mopac, especially at the river crossings on the Colorado River that are typically our choke points, I mean, traffic's still going to exist. However, I do foresee that, you know, those thoroughfares see a little bit of relief. They don't get as much pressure day to day as people start to kind of phase into taking advantage of the light rail. Now, people in the greater Austin area are still gonna have to drive places, right? But they might not have to drive as many places as often as they have this commuter rail option. Now, this doesn't mean that people in the greater Austin area just aren't gonna have to drive, right? Austin's huge, it's got a lot to explore, it's got a lot to take advantage of. Highly recommend having a vehicle. What this does mean is that people are going to start driving less places less often. By the way, if you're still kind of in the research phase, or you're not, you're ready to make a move tomorrow, text the word reload to the number on the screen and I'll send you my Austin area relocation guide. It's got a lot of huge tips on making your life a lot less stressful when you're transitioning from somewhere else to the city of Austin. I'm here to be that sponge, right? I want to soak up as much of that stress as I possibly can and make it as easy as possible on you guys. So don't hesitate to reach out, text reload, get that copy of your guide, and let's dive back into it. So the Project Connect actually has a budget built into it for beautification of the areas. So I'm in an existing station right now, but you can see, you know, they've already taken care of some of the artwork. There's some sculptures here. It's actually a really beautiful, here, I'm just gonna pick up the camera and kind of show you guys the station that I'm at right now. You know, this is Plaza Satillo. It's really pretty. But again, getting back to it, you know, the city of Austin's budgeted for a lot of improvements in the area, like, you know, murals and street art and, you know, beautification of the immediate areas and the actual stations themselves. So you're not just buying into being near a train station, you're buying into a lifestyle where people actually want to hang out, you know, civic centers. And the station that I'm at right now, where this mural is located, you know, as soon as this was built in downtown Austin on the east side, restaurants, bars, coffee shops started popping up everywhere because people want to take advantage when they get off the train of that, and businesses see an opportunity, right? So it's buying into a future just lifestyle that's going to be really neat, really cool, and a good opportunity to kind of get in ahead and take advantage of everything as it comes. They're really going to make sure and keep Austin weird, so to say, when they do these stations. So next, let's talk about the hard truth, right? What are the unknowns? What are the risks? And how do we work around those? So the unknowns, you know, we don't know when the final construction schedule is going to actually be finalized and when the different phases are really going to be complete. We don't know how fast everything actually gets built. And we don't know what the operating costs and the fares down the road are going to look like. And then let's talk on a positive note, you know, what does the momentum that we have going look like? So we got that medium-high federal rating. We've hit a lot of the big milestones and they're consistently being hit. And new city permitting processes are aimed at cutting review times down from 12 to 24 months, so 1 to 2 years, down to just about 6 months for big projects like this. So everything is moving in the right direction. So quick cliff notes on everything that we covered today, right? So we've got the Red Line, which is Austin's existing commuter train. It's more like a commuter shuttle, connects the northern suburbs down to the city core, not very frequent stops, doesn't really serve a lot of people day to day. In juxtaposition, we've got Project Connect, which is Austin's light rail system. It's gonna have all electric trains, cover, you know, a lot more space, a lot more connectivity, a lot more stops, and a lot more frequent stops. Again, we're talking 30,000 plus daily users once the entire project is completed. So it's going to be completely different, completely more connected. And that first phase is going to really change about 10 miles in the core of the city of Austin and out towards the airport. For buyers, the real question is, where do you want to be once this is up and running in the mid 2030s? And for sellers, it's what is construction going to do to your life? What's it going to do to your day-to-day? What's it going to do to your commute times with detours? What's it going to do on the potential upside and a positive note to the value of your home once this is completed? So if you're considering a move to Austin or the surrounding areas and you want somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, lives this day in and day out, and can be your local guide, that's what I'm here for. I'm a licensed real estate agent. And again, I make these videos so that I can connect with my viewers. So don't hesitate to reach out. You've got my phone number, you've got my email, text, call, email, send a courier pigeon, whatever you need to do. Let's connect, let's come up with a game plan, and let's make sure that you have a smooth transition to the city of Austin. Until next time, I'll see you next week.